I'm Spencer Mazyck, and this is another installment of our legal guide to starting a technology company. Joining us now to provide a founder's perspective on several issues is Avner Ronen, co-founder and CEO of Boxee, a freeware media player software platform. Welcome, Avner. Thanks so very much for joining us today.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
So before we get to anything else, for viewers out there who may not be familiar with Boxee, tell us, what is it? I just said that it is a freeware media player software platform, but what exactly does that mean?
That sounds very confusing. Right now it's a box that you can buy at Best Buy or Amazon and use it to replace your cable box. You connect it to your TV like you would connect a DVD player, and then you get all your content from the internet or from over-the-air broadcast. So you can get CBS, ABC, NBC, and Fox for free, and then subscribe to Netflix, YouTube, Vudu, and so on.
Well, and prior to creating Boxee, I understand that you were involved in the development of smart TV. So how does Boxee differ from smart TV exactly?
So Boxee, is a device that you attach to a TV and make it smart. Because there's many TVs right now that are just screens. They don't have CPU or computing power inside. But more and more of the TVs that you would go and see today at a place like Best Buy would have connectivity, so they can connect to the internet and stream from places like Netflix and so on. We believe that we're doing a better job on the user experience, and people replace TV only like once every 5 or 7 years, so it's kind of lagging behind the innovation cycle, where Boxee comes in.
So you're saying that Boxee then would be able to convert a regular TV to perhaps a smart TV, for lack of a better term.
Right, or even if you bought a smart TV a couple of years ago, it may feel dated for you right now. I mean, the user experience on the TV. So get Boxee, you get the best and latest, and it changes much more frequently and updates, and the experience, we believe, is superior.
When I read somewhere that you came up with the idea for Boxee after you or one of your friends tried streaming internet content using an Xbox, is that true?
That's true, yeah. I mean, we hacked our old Xboxes and we put computers, like a home theater PC, underneath our TV, which is a very geeky thing to do. But we were spending more time with our computer connected to the TV than our set-top box connected to the TV. And that kind of made us think that, if we just make it easier for consumers, that's going to be something that more and more people will find appealing.
Yes, if you're doing it, then others are going to want to do it too.
Yeah, which I think is one of the best ways to start a company, right? Is solve a problem for yourself, something you're, intimately passionate about and, and familiar with. If you do a good job for yourself, hopefully you're not too weird, so the problem you solve for yourself applies for millions of other people.
Right. So is Boxee a Delaware corporation that's headquartered in New York City?
Yes.
So tell me, how is it being a tech startup in Silicon Alley, as they say, in New York City? Would you recommend it to other startups?
Oh, definitely. I think New York may be, personally for me, I think it's the best place to run a company. But I think for many other startups, it's great because, how much the valley is, amazing with the number of companies and entrepreneurs. It's also a little bit of a too intense maybe. Everybody you meet, you go to a coffee shop, to a restaurant, everyone around you is involved with internet startups or big internet companies. It's kind of, you lose perspective. In New York, you have a good community now of startups, but you have finance and, and fashion and
a lot of other industries.
Yeah, advertising, and it's a much more diverse culture. And New York City is amazing. I think the best city in the U.S., so it's a great place to live, it's a great place to work, and you can have a good balance of life and work.
I happen to agree that New York City is one of the best cities in the world. So,
yeah.
But I guess, as you know, for this series, we've actually interviewed leading experts on legal issues that tech startups face.
Yep.
And I know you're not an attorney, but
not by any means.
As a founder, in the context of forming a company, were there certain legal issues that you found surprising or somewhat unexpected?
Well, I think for many companies that are just starting up, they can go with boilerplate agreements, and they'll contact a law firm that works with many startups, and they can get stuff that is pretty, standard. But there's always, individual situations where you'd want to maybe pay more attention for the founder's agreement. You're with a couple of friends. There's stuff that you need to agree on, and it helps to have a lawyer that is experienced in those situations and help you work your individual situation. But otherwise, it's been done before so many times. There are so many common structures to go about, and especially if you're putting together a company that's going to go and raise venture capital money, there's certain standards that you
right, and
follow.
We've covered it all throughout this series.
Yeah.
But I guess what people may know is that Boxee isn't your first company.
Right.
You actually started at Odigo, is that correct?
Yeah.
And so was there anything that you found in your experience in starting Odigo that you tweaked or changed when forming Boxee?
I think I had many things that I wanted to change, but then some mistakes you repeat.
What are some of them? Just a couple.
Like, for example, the fundraising process, right? I knew that the ideal investors to back a company like Boxee would be investors that are probably very early stage, that have a lot of consumer internet experience. And since it's a very big idea with going after an incumbent industry, it's going to be hard to convince a big partnership of investors to back the idea. So better off working with a VC that has a smaller number of decision makers. So and we had a short list of investors we wanted to get, but we couldn't convince them to invest. So then we spread ourselves too thin. We spoke with too many investors. Many of them was a waste of time. And there's a decreasing value to talking with investors. At the beginning, you learn from the feedback you get. You change the way you pitch something. You maybe change stuff around the business model, or some basic stuff that you can get constructive feedback on. But after the 5th, 6th, 10th, 12th meeting, you get pretty much the same feedback. So
what advice would you give? Because you mentioned that you have founders or funding for this particular venture, Boxee. I think you have Union Square Ventures, Spark Capital, and SoftBank Capital, just to name a few.
Right.
What advice would you give to other startups that are similarly situated who are also seeking funding too?
I think the most important thing is to be relentless, probably. And if something doesn't work, either in the product or in your pitch, go and revise it. Sometimes, it's a fine line to draw between being stubborn and being persistent.
Right.
It may be that you're getting no's or you're getting negative feedback because your idea is stupid. It may be that it's because, they don't get it, and, you came up with something that's really unique. And, once it gets out there, people will appreciate it, and everybody will understand the value that you saw and they didn't. But it's very hard to figure out whether you're stubborn and your idea is just not good enough, or that everybody else is wrong and you're right.
Did you ever feel that way in either one of the companies, that maybe my idea isn't good enough?
No, I'm on the side that always believes that that the idea is good and that they just don't get it.
Of course. Why did I even ask the question?
And the best comeback is to prove them that you're right. Right? Is execute. Don't give up. But that's me. So it's very hard to know and to judge whether you're, following a false path, or whether you should insist and stay there. And, even when 50 people tell you no and that you're crazy, you should still continue.
Well, and we're talking...
Follow your heart.
Follow your heart. That's the message here.
Or gut, but never your brain, I guess.
Well, so we're talking about legal issues here. And does Boxee have a counsel on board to deal with a lot of the legal issues that you have?
Yeah, when we started, we worked with an outside firm. We still work with an outside firm on many things, but we got to a point where we're doing enough agreements and we have to deal with enough stuff that we felt it made more sense to bring someone on board.
Oh, yeah, and I would say even with an attorney on board, you probably have to become very familiar with certain aspects of corporate law and intellectual property yourself anyway.
Right. Yeah, so we have an in-house counsel. We work with outside counsel as well. And the in-house counsel that we have, she's great. She's not just an attorney. She can understand business issues, right? So she can contribute to the team beyond just her legal capacity, which I think for many startups, even at a relatively early stage, that type of person could be a great asset.
Are there patents pending for the technology and software that Boxee created? I know you guys have the Boxee box and a few other things. Do you have patents pending now?
Not right now. Maybe it's not the smartest thing to do, but we...
Well, do you think that startups should spend emphasis on IP in their early stages, or do you think they shouldn't really worry about it like you?
I think, unfortunately, we live in a time where there's a lot of patent litigation and there's a lot of trolls out there, and big companies and small companies are spending a lot of time and money on fighting patents or getting patents, buying patents, and I think it's very unfortunate. My personal position is that patents on software should be abolished. There's no real need for them. They don't serve the real purpose that patents were made for. It's very different from medical devices. In many cases in software, those are obvious ideas that anybody trying to solve that problem will come up with the same similar solution, and the patents just are being abused at this point. And I guess that's my personal point of view, but I brought it into Boxee, and that's why Boxee has maybe not been aggressive around going after building a patent portfolio. But I would love to try and see if there is a way for startups to actually avoid spending all that time on software patents. I think it's counterproductive in most cases.
Well, and I think we did actually have a guest here who said that maybe you shouldn't spend so much time on IP in the very beginning. But just switching gears for just a bit, I know that you are probably very focused on the brand, the product, and customers right now. But what's the
the brand?
What's the exit strategy for Boxee? Do you want to go public, or would you hope to get acquired, much like Odigo did, actually?
Right. Yeah, Odigo got acquired, but this is again my personal preference. I'm not looking to be a serial entrepreneur. I would never describe myself as such, and I hope that 10 years from now I won't be talking about my 5th company, but rather talk about how Boxee is doing great and generating profits. And
it became the cable alternative.
Right, right. How more and more people are cutting the cord and are not paying for traditional TV. That's my wish. I hope we can build Boxee into a real brand and into a real company with real profits and just a real business. It may or may not happen, so depending on how well we execute. But that would be my personal wish. And I'm not saying that being a serial entrepreneur that sells his company every 2 or 3 years is bad. It's just not me.
Okay, and we only have just a minute left, though, but I wanted to ask you, you already said follow your gut, follow your heart, not your brain, but do you have any other general advice that you would give to young entrepreneurs who are just starting out?
I don't know, I feel like anything I'll say would not be original. I think the most important thing is probably where most ideas die, is they die either in your head or around the table when you talk about it with your friends or family or colleagues. I think the most important thing with an idea, even if it's a bad idea, is just that you go after it, that you start putting your energy into it and run with it. And in most cases, the initial idea is not necessarily the right one or a good one, but you evolve and you change. So the most important thing is to start. I think that's where most people kind of fall off. Yeah, they get stuck but just not by not starting. So start something. Behave like you're establishing a real company, and hopefully good things will follow.
Well, start and then follow your heart, not in your gut.
And your gut. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Very insightful, Avner. We really appreciate you joining us.
Sure. Thank you.
That's Avner Ronen, co-founder and CEO of Boxee. This concludes our tech startup series for now. But for more information on this or other topics, subscribe to BloombergLaw.com, and you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you for joining us. Bye, everybody.